I've seen more healing happen here than anywhere else in this place.
Sometimes love is found in the strangest places.
This is a national TV. You go marry me?
Yes.
Esto pa' todas las mujeres que están en candela. Baby, you on fire.
Your place today has that one inside the
Who knows have you played love for you?
I like you, Pele, for this ball.
Girl, when I don't want you to serve. See how your mates build.
What happens when your vacation takes you to a different occasion?
Welcome to Jamaica.
Baby girl, you bad. Girl, the way you whine. I demand over you, girl. I demand over you, girl. Say you want. If I tell you, say I love you.
Just one phone call away.
Bianca! Bianca!
Get in, let's go!
Bianca!
You say what? You're fired.
We're adding new titles every day to our awesome collection of blockbuster movies. Download the app and subscribe. This isn't just a streaming channel. This is a bold new world of entertainment. Arise Play. Beyond streaming.
I truly know what it is to be young, what it is to be free.
You only need one this time, and then you can be young forever.
Mr. Reed, you have a beautiful wife. Who wouldn't want a part of this?
Part of what?
Replicating the Fountain of Youth. Imagine a whole new life together.
This is the biggest thing that's happened since the resurrection.
Is this Catholicism or voodoo?
We all want more time. More love.
You need one for you. We all wish to never age, but then you realize forever is a very long time. If it's without the one you love.
We're adding new titles every day to our awesome collection of blockbuster movies. Download the app and subscribe. This isn't just a streaming channel. This is a bold new world of entertainment. Arise Play. Beyond streaming.
Welcome to a special edition of this week's 60 minutes of analytical review of the big stories, topical issues, and all the controversies around the world. And we will be focusing on the Anambra elections. I'm Somna Sambu. And now to the headlines. Voting closes in Anambra state governorship election as collation begins in some polling units, with the Independent National Electoral Commission extending voting in some areas due to the failure of the biometric voting authentication system. Arise News correspondents are on standby to give us an on-the-spot assessment. Election observers and monitoring teams will be speaking on the Anambra governorship election. And we shall take a look at the overall conduct of the election, the good, the bad, and the lessons to be learned by all institutions and the electorate in this off-season election. with many polling booths yet to begin or conclude elections due to malfunctioning of the biometric voters authentication system in some areas. The Independent National Electoral Commission in Anambra State says it is considering extending voting in the governorship elections till Sunday. INEC Resident Electoral Commissioner in Anambra, Nwachukwu Oji, had earlier announced at a press briefing an extension of voting period from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Yet, at the close of that period, many polling units were yet to begin voting, including that of the candidate of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, Professor Chukwuma Soludo. Oji said in cases of sustained malfunction of the BVAS, as it is known, the presiding officer must inform the voters and polling agents that accreditation and voting for the affected polling unit shall continue tomorrow or at another time, determined by the Commission. The INEC Commissioner said with the extension of closing time and the recommencement of accreditation where the BVAS consistently malfunctions, no voter will be disenfranchised. But the machines also worked in some polling units where people turned out in their numbers to vote. Let's listen to those who are yet to vote.
I've been here for the past 45 minutes, and my PVC was taken from me. My details were in the INEC register, my photograph, but they now want to accredit me fully with the BVAS and my photograph is rejected, photograph-wise. The fingerprints, 3 of them, tried, no luck.
Why did you?
So I'm still around because I need to vote.
When you ask, what did they tell you? Is it about internet or about the message?
Well, no explanation. The machine said I wasn't smiling enough. So I smiled. I said cheese. And yet he refused to move.
The challenge we are having is that the machine is going off and on. So they are having network challenges, and we keep moving their equipment from one spot to the other so that we will get network.
And we are just being informed that the Independent National Electoral Commission is currently holding a live press briefing in Awka, the Anambra State capital, on these issues, and will cross over straight to the capital of Anambra State for that live briefing.
Okay, you said? That's the first point that I made. I said we are now receiving those kind of information. So we are articulating them, and you will hear from us very soon.
Okay, earlier you made mention of extension of voting election tomorrow based on the
I never made.
Some areas where the BVAS.
No. My state.
We would like to know those areas, those local governments.
My statement was very clear, and it's in text. So all we did was to extend the period of voting from 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. That's what we did in the earlier in the day.
Have you, in those areas where you extended voting, are you sure that voting has ended in those areas?
Until the last voter vote, that's when we will show. So we are still receiving information from the different polling units. It says tomorrow or any other time.
What is the meaning of that? Is it for voting or what exercise is taking place within this period of
I don't understand that.
Paragraph 3 of your statement.
What does he say?
What does he say?
The paragraph I'm paraphrased. He says.
No, don't paraphrase. Read it.
If you have it, read it. What is it?
Just read it.
The individual cases. The cases are case by case. Where it requires then you will apply the rule.
Right, so in essence, if you can tell us, does it mean that voting continues up until tomorrow?
Voting continues until the last voter votes.
Once they are in queue by 4 or 4 p.m., they will be even if we have 2,000 voters on the queue by 4 p.m. today, until the last voter on that particular queue votes, the poll will not close. So if the last voter votes on Monday, voting will continue. That's exactly what we said.
Okay, sorry, let me read out your earlier text. It said the Commission wishes to reiterate that in cases of sustained malfunction of the BVAS, the presiding officer must inform the voters and polling agents that accreditation and voting for the affected polling units shall continue tomorrow, or at any other time determined by the Commission.
That we have to receive information to be able to make that determination.
What we need because the implementation of that to go.
It's clear to me.
So in that respect, Honorable Rex, for Saturday, there was restriction of movement. Are you extending restriction of movement beyond today to accommodate the election activity?
Restriction of movement was imposed by the security agencies, and I think that they are in the best position to make that determination.
So in how many local governments are we experiencing this extension or the continuation of
I cannot respond to that until we complete the process of assessing the information.
Honorable Rex, have you activated an avenue where you synergize with the security of Plain TV in case if there is need for an extension?
We have a situation room that is also connected with the operations rooms of the operation room of the security agencies.
Have you opened up the portal where the results are supposed to be coming in?
I don't have that information.
Because the portal, we understand that there will be results from the polling units to the portal. Is the portal open? Can you tell us the address, the web address?
The portal is already existing. That's the IREV. So it's called it's anytime once you are registered on that portal, you can see whatever the previous
result. What the portal, the address, web address of the portal now, sir?
You can find it on INEC website. I don't have exactly the web address.
Can you control the Look, listen, the portal, the INEC IREF portal is open 24 hours. It has never closed. So anytime you go on that particular portal, you will see any result you wish to see. The moment the first result comes in, that it will be uploaded into that particular portal. So it has never closed.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
So further updates will take place as may be determined by the President Electoral Commission. No.
All right, we are just hearing from Nkwachuku Oji, the resident electoral commissioner of the Independent National Electoral Commission, right there in Awka, the Anambra State capital, briefing Nigerians on what's going on there. And of course, they said that voting will continue until the last person on the queue votes in the election as a result of the challenges being faced by the failure of the biometric voter authentication system, BVAS as it's known, which is a device that helps in checking the facial and fingerprint recognition of voters. Well, to help us understand the prevailing issues in the Anambra State governorship election, I have with me in the studio Professor Jibrin Ibrahim, Senior Fellow of the respected civil society think tank, Center for Democracy and Development. And we also have with us Dr. Sam Amadi, who is also joining the CDD. He's an election monitor under the CDD this time around in the studio. And of course, we will be having from Awka joining us live, Ezenwa Nwagu, who is also a board member of Yaga Africa, and Arise analyst Professor Abiodun Adeni will also be joining us. But just before we begin the analysis here, let's cross over to Anambra for live updates with Arise correspondent Oviteme George, who is standing by to give us an on-the-spot assessment All right, I've been told he's not yet here. So let's just go straight to you, Prof. Jibrin, what's your general assessment from the CDD on what's been ongoing? A lot of voters staying on the queues, not being able to exercise their franchise, while in some areas, the same technology worked and there were no issues, and collation is ongoing in those areas.
Well, first of all, we have had so much anxiety and worry and over this election. Personally, I have a sense of relief that it wasn't as bad as we feared. And I think my first point really is to thank the elders who intervened over the past few days to persuade those who had said there have been no elections to calm down and allow the citizens vote and express their mandate. Secondly, the fear about possible violence has receded as people saw evidence that the lifting of the sit-at-home was genuine, and that therefore they could come out and vote without fear. So that's the first point I want to make, relief. The second point is the technology challenges we have faced. I think it is very clear that in certain polling units, voting couldn't start on time because the BVAS machine didn't function well. Our observers are still trying to establish whether they failed because of poor training of the ad hoc staff or whether there were problems with some of the machines. We were reassured when we escalated the matter to INEC earlier in the day when they said they had reserved machines and roving crews that were redistributing those machines to places where there were challenges. I think the final point is really to ensure that the election is concluded. As we've just heard from Dr. Oji, the resident electoral commissioner, it was extended first to 4 p.m. and as is the usual rule in INEC, anybody on the queue at 4 p.m. would be able to vote, no matter how much time it takes.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Just before we go back to Oveteme, let me just get your views very quickly, Prof. We've seen, INEC saying that they are deploying some technicians to go around and help out with this technology, yet there was a challenge. Just very quickly before we go to Oveteme.
Like he said, what that means that, look, we're going to be paying more attention now, maybe from the normal issues of credibility, fairness, now to now issues of technical efficiency. So we're still getting our feedback. INEC made provisions for roving engineers for substitution and replacement. But again, the question is, we will now deepen the trials before elections and deployments so that they can quickly map out what could happen and have real-time quick intervention. So it's a learning curve for INEC, but so far, so good. It's good that we're moving now to focus on INEC rather than non-state actors, violence, military, security, or unprofessional behavior. The question now is administration.
All right, I must stop you there right now so that we'll have Oveteme judge, and I've just also learned that he's there with Professor Chukwuma Soludo, who is the candidate of the All Progressives Grand Alliance. Thank you so much, Oveteme. Can you just bring us to speed before you get to Prof. Chukwuma Soludo on what exactly has been the overview from the field as a correspondent covering this election?
From 8 o'clock in the morning, when eligible voters arrived here at OFI 002 polling unit in Isofia and Agwata local government area, the machines failed to work. A technology glitch, whatever you want to call it, it was quite bad. And so, just behind me, you can see the Prof is standing by my side. People of 80, 90 years old sitting there and insisting they would not leave without casting their ballot, exercising their franchise. And they've been here since sometimes the machines would work and then other times it won't work, just like a rig worker who goes offshore and returns to land after probably 3 weeks. But now, the good news is the candidate of the All Progressives Grand Alliance and former governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, has cast his ballot. So, Prof, what can you say about the system now that you've cast your ballot?
It's a long journey to this place. As I said, I arrived here 11:30 a.m. and I cast my ballot at 5:10 p.m. Exactly about 5 hours and 40 minutes. It took me. I stayed back, and because the glitches, a little bit widespread around the state, but I was always confident, relatively optimistic, that in the end, the process will come through. I'm a process person all my life. I believe in processes, and I have always exercised my confidence in the leadership at the INEC to come through to their assurances and promise to deliver a credible and transparent, free, fair election in Anambra State. And I think the technology was designed to be able to achieve that. But so far, glitches here and there, which I think will keep on improving on. So I believe what I want to say is that, yes, I'm glad I have been able to cast my ballot. I wanted to wait till all of them do, but I just want to run around the rest of the 16 polling units in my ward where there has been a total failure to see how it is going. Anambra is Apuga, and Apuga is Anambra. Even if only 100 persons vote, Apuga will still win. But the only reason I was eminently concerned is that I want to really have a massive people's mandate. Over 500 members. The membership of the support groups that propelled me to this stage is over 500,000. And I was expecting over 1 million votes. But with this now, it's going to be grossly reduced in terms of outcome. Short of what people, the speculations, rumors, and the, all over the place in social media, and the report today of even somebody caught in Abatete, either thumb printing and writing results out there in their home. And then now reports of some trucks.
So, Vetame, can you round off? We want you to round off.
Anambra, I hear about 30 or 35 trucks being escorted into Anambra. We don't know what they are for. We hear about people wanting to do all kinds of things. But short of those, people outrightly writing the result, I think the mandate of the people will be resounding by the time the result is announced. I'm glad to have cast my vote, and I look forward to INEC announcing the result pretty shortly. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, we just spoke with the candidate of the All Progressives Grand Alliance and former governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Professor Chukwuma Soludo. Well, he has cast his vote, and others are still doing same here. It's a good thing to note that the machines are beginning to work, surprisingly. Perhaps a touch of the divine intervention, if you might say that. But it's good news. Maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to round off this exercise. But I think it might roll into the night.
All right. Just before we let you go, Veteme, how prepared are those voters there to wait till the wee hours of the day, if it takes that, for them to actually cast their vote? Are they that patient enough to wait?
Well, before now, they made a statement that they would be here until they vote. Even the candidate said he would be the last person to vote. But because he gave reasons why he's about to leave now, the good thing is because the machines are beginning to work, it's even easier. Just that the crowd behind me, you would see elderly persons, women and men, between 80 and 90. When you see them, you know that these are very old and aged persons in society. But their commitment is that they would like to cast their ballot, and of course, for the choice of the person who will take over from Willie Obiano in Government House, Anambra. So it's more like them committed to exercising their franchise. Their civic duty is what they want to perform. I can tell you, just I don't know their names. These ones in this front row have been here since. They have been here since. Look at the old woman over there. That one is about, maybe you can guess.
All right, we must thank you so much, Veteme George, who is speaking to us right from Anambra there. And Prof, we've seen all of this, the malfunctioning machine now working in that specific area where we have candidate of the incumbent ruling party, the All Progressive Grand Alliance. How elated are you to actually see that, you know, this voting has begun in that party?
Very glad indeed that the problems are being sorted out and the citizens of Anambra are able to cast their vote. It is extremely important that everybody that wants to vote gets that opportunity. It will give credibility to the election. It will give citizens the confidence that they are players in determining their political destiny.
All right. And we actually supposed to have Ezenwa Nwagu joining us from Okade, and I've been told that he's prepared. So Ezenwa, can you just give us an overview of your observation of the entire election, having monitored it earlier? Right. Sorry, we're having a technical glitch there, but let me just come straight to you, Dr. Sam. What do you think is responsible for this initial challenges that INEC is facing? Because, I mean, we had thought that some of these machines were well tested ahead of the election. The focus was more on security, and a lot of Nigerians just shifted focus away from INEC because of the reassurances. Why do you think this, you know, election machines were not tested ahead of time?
Well, maybe because of, you know, the way this election was commenced in terms of the focus on security also affected INEC's on-ground preparations. You know, it into their own planning, it into their time. Oftentimes, technology really, like Prof said, even in developed countries, you know, you see, of course, memorable one, 2000 at Florida, the child ballot and all the issues around making a determination as to what this means. So it's not unique, but when it's widespread, number one, it becomes a problem. And secondly, when it's widespread and there's no remedial intervention on time. So what INEC had set out was a recognition that this could happen, and I had put in first replacement plan for those that may not work for whatever reason, and secondly, engineers who could quickly deal with it. Borrowing from 2014 and election experience, when we discovered that some of these things could be for failure of carrying out basic things like removing the nylon on the face of the thumb printer. So there could be many reasons things may not work. But again,
especially with some voters,
exactly,
because of the sunlight,
whatever. But the point is, the lesson here, and off-season elections are laboratory for experimentation and learning what may not work. So I think INEC will be picking up these issues and then probably scheduling more time to try out these technologies when they adapt them. And this is not entirely a new technology, don't forget. INEC just adapted a technology they're used to.
Just hold,
so
hold your
we'll get
there,
to the learning process.
We still have Ezenwa Nwagu. I've been made to know that he's here with us. So can you give us an insight into your monitoring of the election today, Ezenwa Nwagu?
Yeah, good. You can hear me now, I hope. And so I think that Prof and Dr. Sam have made the point. The hitches that we have had with technology is not something that we didn't envisage, but we should just find out that in Isoko South Federal, Isoko 1 Federal South, we just had about 87 polling units. These equipments were tested in that place, and then we started chest thumping that you know, the BVAS will deliver in a large scale 5,000 plus polling units election. So there is a challenge with that. Technology, you start small and then scale up. I hope we are going to be able to learn that these challenges, the technology acquisition and adoption framework of INEC, and we should be able to interrogate that going forward, because this is something that we had discussed even in Abuja before we started coming for this election, saying that we need to be a bit cautious in the way we deploy this on a large scale. So I don't think that even the technology, the assistants, the technical assistants that we have, they are also trying their hands. They are not very even proficient in solving the problem. So that itself poses a huge challenge. They come to the place and they are trying, they don't even know what to do.
practically speaking. So overall, because you have an unusual election does not mean that you lower the standard of election integrity. INEC knew that they were going to conduct election in an unusual environment, in unusual situation. And so when you had Festus Okoye talking a few days ago, the impression was that if there is any challenge, the excuse that Unkwa is providing that some of the officials did not show up.
All right, just before you continue, Mr. Wango, we just want to also have an overview of the entire observation by your team and that of other election observers. What have you seen, apart from these glitches that we're having based on this failure of the BVAS? In terms of security, we've also heard that there were issues of ballot box snatching in some areas. What's the general observation you've made?
The issue of violence is not as is what you have could be said to be insignificant in real terms, because this will be a one-off thing in one or two places. The bigger challenge was that the polls did not open on time in about 55% of the polling units as about 10:30. That is worrying, and that is what has occasioned this extension that you have seen. In the places where I observed, the people themselves organize themselves, they are coordinated. In fact, they have provided some kind of shelter for themselves, envisioning that this might go into late hours. And this is somewhere in Enugu, Agidi, in Amobia communities. The people there are prepared that they are going to have a long run. And the exciting thing for me, just like Prof. and Dr. Sam said, is that now we are seeing public outcry that the BVAS is not working. And we didn't expect that there was going to be any public that would be crying, that will now be crying out. So it's heartwarming that we have public outcry, which is to say that the citizens of Anambra are excited, they are interested, they want to vote, and we have to make sure that all that excitement does not peter into nothing. We must secure that right of the citizens to vote and let their votes also count at this time.
Thank you so much. Just hold on there while we speak with Prof. In this instance now that INEC has decided to take a decision to allow the last voter to vote before polling will close in all the voting centers, how soon do you think we should be expecting results to come in, considering that it's haphazard? We can't say the number of polling units that are affected. INEC is not giving that figure. You just heard the briefing that they had. They were not so sure. They couldn't say they had extended entirely to Sunday. They just said until the last person votes. How do you think that will affect collation and all of that?
Well, the problem is that we don't know what proportion of polling units were affected by the late start. But it's important for viewers to know that this is not a new procedure for INEC. It's always been the practice that anybody on the queue at the time voting ends has a right to vote, and that right will be respected, and the officials will continue till everybody on the queue. And in fact, once the time for the voting ends, the formal time, a security official or an INEC official will stand in line as the last person, and everybody in front of.
Okay, but here's the challenge. Voting had not started in some places as at 4 p.m. when the extension was done. So how do you try to factor this in now? The extended time came about and voting has still not started. So anyone who walked into that place, maybe went to do something here and there, what will be the fate of that voter?
Well, I think we don't know, and I suspect as of this time, INEC itself is not sure, because we saw the resident electoral commissioner say that they will now go to review the situation, see the places where there are challenges, and what measures should be taken to address those challenges. But I think the spirit from what he said is that they are going to make sure that everybody that comes out to vote has that right to vote protected.
All right, just before I come to you, Professor Abiodun Adeni is on, he's in the Overflow studios of Arise News here, and I want to bring him up now to give us his overview of these elections and how it may affect the integrity of conducting polls ahead of the next presidential election in 2023. Your overview, Prof.
Yeah, very well. My colleagues that spoke before me have been very, very exhaustive in their analysis, and of course, most of their sentiments tallies with mine. First is for us to feel a sense of gratification that the election is holding at all, that the enthusiasm is good, irrespective of the fears we had in advance of the election. And second is to see that INEC is continuing with the attempt to to ramp up or to increase the use of technology in the process. I prefer INEC to continue in this regard, irrespective of the floundering that we are seeing. I believe that with time we'll perfect the process. Let's remember that initially we had problems with the card reader, even failing when President Jonathan was going to use it. And of course, at some point, there were market improvement. I see BVAS, being an instance where that experience can also be replicated. So we're making progress as the case could be. And of course, it's also gratifying that INEC is responding very quickly to the emergent problems emerging in Anambra State in the last few hours, where people, are being disenfranchised. So it's okay, we can continue along this line, but we also need to understand that the process is not concluded until probably the post-election process is started. We've gone past the pre-election process. We are now in the election proper stage. The post-election process is also coming. And how do I mean in this regard? We're talking about the declaration of results. We're talking about the tendency of our people to tribunalize the process. What more can we do to prevent the resort to tribunal so that we will not have a situation where the next governor of Anambra State will not be somebody who is legally supposed to be there, who is legally or rightly supposed to be there, but not legitimately supposed to be in power, like we are having in some states, probably like Imo and Bayelsa. We need a situation where the results, will be acceptable to everybody, and will not think that we can win by hook or crook at the end of the day. And one way to justify this is if election is completely Prof, free, fair, and credible.
Sorry to just interject there. During normal elections in Anambra State, voter apathy is usually a challenge. But here we are trying to run away from voter apathy as a result of insecurity. And then on election day, we have security provided, no incidences of insecurity here and there so much. But being faced with a new challenge electronically, how do you think this may affect voter turnout overall, and then the issues of legitimacy that may arise if we have someone emerging with less than 20% turnout of voters?
Well, I agree with you, now. Ordinarily, we expect that as many people that registered will vote, and democracy is essentially representative. We expect that those who will determine who rules Anambra State in the next 4 years, comprise of a larger percentage of those who registered. But most of the time, even on the larger Nigerian scale, most of the time we always have voter apathy is always in evidence, and if it manifests again in Anambra State this time, I will not be too surprised. But the onus is largely on us, maybe largely on government, INEC, like I said somewhere else, beyond voter education, beyond educating people on the technicalities of voting, it's also the importance of sensitizing the populace on the need to exercise their franchise, and it shouldn't just fall on INEC alone. The political parties also have responsibility in this regard. The relevant government agencies, Ministry of Information, National Orientation Agency, they also have that responsibility. We also appreciate the fact that some of the time this problem may be a result of lack of understanding on the part of the populace, maybe a lack of maybe illiteracy, but of course we need more conscientization. The powers that have the influence, that have the greater grace, need to ramp up efforts, so that we can have more people integrated in the voting and decision-making process consistent with the philosophy of democracy.
Very interesting there, Prof. Let's come back to you, Dr. Sam. This issue of the CDD and other election observation teams monitoring and then, giving advice just before INEC did extend this voting, we are seeing a lot of observation teams bringing out preliminary reports on what needs to be done. From the angle of CDD, how do we maintain the integrity of this election so that at the end of the day, we have results that are acceptable, and then we don't have post-election violence as a result of either these challenges of the BVAS or even acceptability of the results because people just feel that there was no much voter turnout?
Well, elections are very intricate and process-based activities. So what the essence of the CDD decision room is to receive information from the field, like observers, CDD observers, and then the analysts who have put together, who come from diverse background, analyze these feedbacks, pinpoint what the legal, political legitimacy issues around them, and they propose interventions that is pushed back to the INEC.
And what are some of those things that you've been hearing actually from?
Let's take, for example, the issue of malfunctioning by BVAS, okay? Now, part of what we've talked about is, look, INEC has a standard formula. So if INEC is going to solve this problem, they have to maintain a standardized procedure, which is to say, INEC cannot say officers on the field to use discretion to do this, maybe manual accreditation or sort of other methodology, because that will impact on the credibility, legality of the voting. Voting is a constitutional right. And so anybody who is on the voting, who has been accredited, initially promised to be post-accreditation. Maybe there's disruption, people are accredited. So the rule is that once you are there on the time for accreditation, and you have a right to vote, even if it is 12 midnight. Now, if this problem has come because of even non-accreditation, okay, at this point, then our suggestion has been maintain a procedure. And the procedure includes replacement, fixing the thing, and then as much as possible, you have to balance between the need for a credible electoral process and the need for people to have opportunity to vote. So what we do is not just to push INEC, but to help INEC go back to some basic formula or procedure. But again, the big question I want to leave is that, look, ultimately, this gives us the learning curve here is that we are also learning that as much as we have been working hard on the credibility, electoral transmission, we're not going to go back to do performance management and enhance those kind of.
Sorry, I just have to interject here and get your views. What are the specific reports you've been getting from your election observers on the field, apart from this issue of BVAS? For example, if voting is extended till midnight or till tomorrow, it means people would have to be afraid for their safety. What happens to them if they're on the queue because of the fears of insecurity?
Well, I think the safety issue has been assured in the sense that it is clear those who had threatened the election have withdrawn that threat, and we know they are keeping their word.
Incredible, yeah.
So we are not really worried about that. We are more worried about some of the other reports we receive from our observers, many of whom, for example, have noticed that voters are being given money and to vote in one direction or the other. And as we all know, that's a criminal act, and that it compromises the essence of the elections when people vote for a candidate because they've been given money rather than because they believe that that's the candidate that will govern best as far as they understand what their objectives are.
All right, thank you so much, Professor Jibrin. We'll just have to go on this short break. When we come back, we'll be speaking with Ezenwa Nwagu on these issues of vote buying and other observation on the field. Stay with us. Welcome back to a special edition of This Week on the Anambra State governorship elections. I still have with me in the studio Professor Jibrin Ibrahim, a senior fellow of the respected civil society think tank Center for Democracy and Development. And we also have Dr. Sam Amadi, who is also one of the election observation team members of the Center for Democracy and Development. And then we have Professor Abiodun Adeni, a Rise News analyst. Also with us is Ezenwa Nwagu, who is a board member of Yaga Africa and is monitoring the elections right there in Anambra, and we'll bring you in, Ezenwa Nwagu, to tell us about the issues of vote buying that we have heard the CDD saying and some other election observation teams. What have you observed? And we have also learned at the moment that results are already coming in from the areas, the polling units where there were no issues. Just bring us to speed on what you know at this time.
Well, as you know, the issue of vote buying is done surreptitiously, and but the current legal regime, that electoral legal regime, the offense, the penalty for it is a slap in the wrist, really. So, Professor Jibo talked about the fact that is a criminal offense. A lot of people do not think it's a criminal offense. In the places where we observed, far away from the polling units, discussing with some of the voters, they openly tell you that this party gives this amount and the other party gives this amount. And they say it with all kinds of, please. So we explain these things away, but a crime is a crime. And unfortunately for us, the security agents in Anambra are more focused on extraneous disruption of the election than what is happening really at the polling unit. So it's pervasive. And in 2017, if you see the reports of the observer reports for 2017, that was pervasive. Voter inducement and vote trading were rife. So going forward, we need to be able to change the laws in a way that there will be stiffer penalties for those who engage in vote trading and vote buying. And the law should be expansive enough, because even a few days before the election,
all right, just take us through the process of collation right now. We've heard that the collation is ongoing at the moment. We don't know if your observation team is hearing anything at Yaga Africa. And then, of course, concerning the issue of vote buying that we're talking about, a lot of people have described this as a contest of billionaires. And so it is up to you, civil society, to be able to fashion out how this issue can be reduced alongside INEC. What sort of solutions you'll be proffering very quickly?
Yes, that's what I posed the argument that if first it has to be seen as a crime. Those who indulge in it do not think they are committing a crime. They think that it's explainable. Poverty explains it. The unemployment and all of that is used to explain away a clear, obvious criminal act, and that needs to change if we do anything about that. I have been stuck trying to engage in this interview. When I go back to the data center, I'll be able to harvest what has come out in terms of collation and results. But of course, we do have our collation agents in the 21 local governments, and I think that in no distant time, some of that will be trickling into the data center.
And I move straight to you, Professor Abiodun Adeni. These issues that we've had with the BVAS have thrown up the issues that may arise when we talk about electronic voting. And some of the federal lawmakers, especially from the ruling party, who had earlier opposed this issue of electronic transmission of results, may have found a saving grace in this to actually push out the argument. What do you think we should do to ensure that this argument for electronic transfer of transmission results is not lost as a result of these BVAS challenges? Very quickly, sir.
I think we should just keep going. You know, nothing can be perfect from the beginning. We're in the 21st century where technology is determining practically everything, every aspect of our life, in the banking sector, in the oil sector, and there's no reason why we should not accept it in the electoral process. It's the only reason why, for now, rigging is reducing in the actual voting process, where politicians are thinking another way of circumventing the cost of election by trying to induce electorates ahead of the polls. You know, it's just because we're increasing technology. We can't go back on it. We'll keep trying. No technology is perfect. Airplanes, unfortunately, do crash sometimes. Even brand new ones do crash, you know. Motor cars do crash as well, unfortunately, irrespective of the perfection, you know, by those who manufacture them. What we need to do in the course of development is to continue to try and not to be discouraged at this early stage, you know. It is the way to go, and I think we should be steadfast at it. We should be conscientious about it, believing that, you know, we have to keep the focus to succeed.
And I come to you, what are the lessons learned, especially on the use of technology, Prof? A lot of federal lawmakers, especially the senators, have found an excuse on why we shouldn't adopt this technology, or we should adopt it piecemeal.
Well, there is no way we can avoid the use of technology, because simply it makes things better, easier, and safer. Of course, sometimes there are challenges, and I agree with Prof that we surmount these challenges as they come along, but it's definitely the way to go. We envisage a world in a few years' time where you don't need to go to a polling unit. You can sit in your house, use your phone, and vote. And blockchain technology is giving us technological guarantees that that can be done in a way that cannot be hacked, that will be safe, and will guarantee a fair outcome of the elections.
All right, and I come to you as we try to await the results of the collation that's ongoing in areas where there were no challenges. How do we ensure that, you know, there's no issue of rigging, allegedly, because politicians usually say rigging takes place at night, and with this confusion of when election will end generally or not, how do you think we can secure the votes as we get into the collation period?
The CDC's press statement earlier today said it as a look, voters as much as possible should try and be there. They said those who protect their votes. Those who count votes are more important than those who cast votes. So vote counting is actually a very critical part. It's point to vote, but then we must count. So first, INEC should deploy the same level of transparency we've seen, credibility, and ramped up efficiency in making sure that the votes are counted. But again, look, we need to, like I said, technology needs that we keep ramping up intelligence, institutional intelligence to handle them. Technology will keep being more efficient, more accurate, and user-friendly, but then we need to begin to see this as a lesson to keep increasing the human intelligence.
Just very quickly, what will you tell those voters who are on the queue right now, waiting till the last person will vote in terms of security?
I would tell them one thing. Anambra has also surprised us again. They were telling us, look, Anambra will surprise you. They've surprised us in the security level. They've even surprised us in even the level of our turnout. So let them surprise us all the way. Stay peacefully, cast the vote. So this will be a major victory for democracy run up to 2023. We've seen a degree of resilience, courage, calmness on Anambra, so they should finish the job.
All right, Anambra is regarded as the light of the nation. We must thank you, Associate Professor Sam Amadi, who is joining the Center for Democracy and Development's election monitoring team. And then we've had Professor Jibrin Ibrahim of the CDD. He's a senior fellow of that institution, a well-renowned think tank. And then we've also had Professor Abiodun Adeni, a Rise News analyst, joining us alongside Ezenwa Nwagu of Yaga Africa. Is a board member in that institution. And earlier on we had Oveteme George, a Rise News correspondent, feeding us on what's going on. And it's on this point that we'll have to end the program for now, though Arise News is continuing coverage of the entire Anambra State governorship polls right from this voting way into the night, and then collation will be bringing you all the results as they come in. Well, that's how it's been for this special edition of This Week. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, goodbye and thank you for watching. I'm Somna Sambu.